Today I have 2 buckets of flour, 1 bucket of rice, 1 bucket of homemade pasta, some canned potatoes from the garden, a bucket of salt, and some sugar to take down to the basement for long-term storage. Not bad for one day of work. Welcome to Hopewell Heights. I'm Steph, and in this video I'm going to be talking about my 1-year emergency food supply plan. We have lived on our homestead for about 5 years now, and over that time I've learned how to can and freeze food properly and dry food. I've learned a lot of ways to preserve food, but one thing that I put off until pretty recently is long-term food storage, specifically thinking about emergency situations. And this could really be anything. It could be a natural disaster, it could be inflation, which is something, I'm recording this in July of 2022, so that's something we're experiencing right now. Groceries are a lot higher, gas prices are a lot higher, so it could be those things. It could be actual food shortage where there's not enough food available. I don't claim to have a crystal ball or any insider information, but I do try to keep up with global news. I think a lot of times the culture wars can be really distracting, and I'm not saying that that stuff isn't important. It's important, we should be paying attention to that, but we can't be distracted from other very real events as well, like the weather. I know we've only had one hay cutting and it's July. It's very dry. A lot of drought across our country. There are a lot of policies that are affecting farmers negatively across the world. There's just a lot going on, and it doesn't matter where you fall politically, because in the event of a food shortage, it's going to affect us all. And in the Bible, God tells us that we are not to live in fear, and we're not to live in a state of anxiety or panic. We're to turn all of our anxieties and our cares over to Him because He cares for us. So when I think about preparedness, especially in regard to food, I'm not fearful or panicked at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I'm focusing on preparedness now. That way, in the future, if something does happen to where we actually really need to dig into this emergency supply, then I don't have to panic because I'm prepared. Not only am I prepared for my family, but I'll have extra to share with others. And I think if we look at the Proverbs 31 woman, we can see that she was a prepared woman. She traveled and brought food from afar, and she smiled without fear of the future because her family was clothed and prepared for winter. She also extended her hand to the needy. That means she must have had extra to share. Those are all things that I really want to be able to do as well, while here in this country we are still living in abundance. I know that might sound crazy if you have been hit really hard by inflation like a lot of us have, but compared to the rest of the world and for people throughout most of history, we are still living in abundance right now because we can go to a grocery store and we can still see food on shelves and still have most of our basic needs met. So while that is true, it is a really good idea to take advantage and prepare for the future just in case. Personally, no matter what the next year or two looks like, this is something that I want to continue for the rest of my life, because what I realize is that we are living in a unique time where we are very short-sighted when it comes to food and preparedness. Most of us probably only have 1 or 2 weeks worth of food and resources in our home. And for most of history, that just wouldn't have been the case. People would have had to prepare for winter every year. They would have had to think about a whole year's food all the time. They would have had to find some way to store food until the next growing and harvest season. So I want to get to a place to where that is my normal. Now, my goal of having a 1-year food supply is a pretty big goal, but I feel pretty confident that I can reach it, and I'll tell you how in just a little bit. But if that seems intimidating to you, then just focus on something more attainable, like 3 months or 1 month, or even just a week's worth of food that is tucked away, that you're not dipping into. It's just there for an emergency. I actually found a really great tool, and it's free, where you can plug in how many family members you have in your household and the ages, and it will calculate how much food you need for a set amount of time. So if you want just like a 1 month food supply, it'll calculate what all you need. So that's what I did for our family of 6, and it was a really great starting place. The absolute easiest way to go about building up an emergency food supply is just to buy a pre-packaged emergency food supply kit. There are all kinds of companies out there with kits for 1 month, 3 months, up to 12 months. But for one person, I looked this up, for enough meals for one person for 12 months, these kits are close to $10,000. $10,000. Now, we have 6 people in our family, so right now I'm not in a position to drop $60,000 on an emergency food supply, and I have no desire to do that because I also don't have a desire to eat prepackaged food for a whole year. I like to cook from scratch, and in the event of an emergency, we've got a wood stove, we've got water sources. I would like to be able to actually cook my meals. So when I think about long-term food storage, what I want to focus on are the staples, just ingredients that I can make a meal with. Now, this is gonna look a little bit different for everyone, but we have chickens, we have a garden, and we have livestock. So I have eggs, I have dairy, I have fruit and vegetables. So things that I am stocking up on right now are grains like flour, white rice. White rice stores better long-term than brown rice. Oats, sugar. Sugar, you can store that indefinitely. Salt is another big one. Things like that, just the basics. That is what I am focused on, and that seems very attainable to me. I know that if all I had was clean water, flour, and salt, I can make a loaf of bread, because all you need to make a sourdough starter is flour and water. You can make bread with just a starter, water, flour, and salt. So a few staples stocked up really do go a long way. The amount of food that I need to feed my family for an entire year is a lot. It's a lot of food, and it would be a huge undertaking to buy all of that food at once and then try to package and prepare it for long-term storage, because you can see behind me here, I have some bags of like flour and rice, and I'll show you how I'm packaging that a little bit later. But this original packaging that food comes in is not good for long-term storage, because light, moisture, bugs, all kinds of things can get to that food and contaminate it, and the shelf life just isn't that long. So to store food long-term properly, it's a little bit of a process. And like I said, I just don't have the time to do an entire year's food supply like all in one day. So what I have been doing is I buy food in bulk. I order from Azure Standard. They are amazing. It's like shopping at Costco, but it's online. You pick your order up once a month at a drop somewhere in your area. What I have been doing is just every month I order a little bit extra, maybe double or triple what I know I'm actually going to use in a month. And then I set aside what I'm going to actually be using right now. The rest of it gets stored long term. So I am slowly building up my 1-year emergency food supply. I've been doing this for a couple months, and it's already adding up really quickly. So this month in my Azure Standard order, I got a 50-pound bag of organic flour. I'm going to fill up this big jar with flour, and I know that I will use this over the next month. And whatever is left in this big bag, I'm going to store in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, and then store that in food grade buckets, and I'll tuck that away in the basement for long-term storage. I also got a 25-pound bag of white rice and some sugar. So I'll fill up my bins with all those things. That way I know I'll have enough for this month, and anything left over, I will store. I've still got a ton of flour left over in this 50-pound bag. So now I'm going to start preparing it for long-term storage. And to do that, I have gallon Mylar bags. Mylar bags come in all different sizes. You can get them in, really small, I think like pint-sized, quart-sized, gallon-sized, all the way up to like 5 or 6 gallon bags. So this is what they look like. And the reason you want to use Mylar bags for long-term food storage is because they keep light and moisture out. Light and moisture are enemies of long-term food storage. I actually have a vacuum sealer. You can see it right there behind me. And I have the clear bags that come with that. So I could vacuum seal food, which would remove all of the air from the bag, but those bags are translucent. Light would still get through. So you want to use Mylar bags when you are storing food long term. Make sure the Mylar bags that you get are really, really thick. Some of them are really thin and they actually let some light through. So these are like 9mm Mylar bags, and these have a Ziploc as well, which make it really easy to reseal them once you open them up to use some of the contents inside. The next thing you're going to need is oxygen absorbers. These go inside of the Mylar bags with your food, and they remove the oxygen from the bag once it's sealed. They don't remove the air, so air is only 21% oxygen. The rest is nitrogen. They just remove the oxygen from the bag, which protects your food against pathogens or any insect eggs hatching or anything like that, and keeps it from degrading. Now, oxygen absorbers come in different sizes as well, just like Mylar bags. So I have little bitty 50cc oxygen absorbers, and then I have 300cc oxygen absorbers. How many oxygen absorbers will depend on the type of food you're storing and the size of your Mylar bags. Once I have my food and oxygen absorbers sealed inside of my Mylar bag, then I am going to be storing those bags inside of a 5-gallon food grade bucket. The reason you want to do this is because while Mylar bags do protect against light and moisture, they are not puncture proof. So rodents like mice could bite through these, and then your food would be totally ruined. So you want to store your Mylar bags inside of a food grade bucket. I guess you could technically store them inside like a plastic tote, but those are not waterproof, and you're gonna have, the seals aren't tight on those, so you're gonna have a lot of air getting in. Using these food grade buckets really just adds another layer to preserving your food for longer. I will link my free ebook with all of the details on long-term food storage in the description. So I have different supplies that you'll need, sizes of Mylar bags, how many oxygen absorbers to use with different kinds of food, how long different kinds of food last in long-term food storage. I have all of the details saved for you guys, so be sure to check the description once you're finished watching this video. Now, when it comes to things like flour, sugar, and rice, it would be really easy to just buy the huge 5-gallon Mylar bags, stick one down inside of a bucket, dump my flour in, seal it up, and call it good. The reason I'm not doing that is because once I would open that huge 5-gallon bag of flour, I would need to use that flour or it would go bad. And I know that my family is not going to use that much flour very quickly. So when I'm packaging up food for long-term storage, I choose the size of my Mylar bag based on how much I think we would use of that particular item. So I know that in this gallon Mylar bag, I can comfortably fit about 12 cups of flour. And if I pulled this bag out of a 5-gallon bucket with several more bags of flour in it, and I just opened this one bag with 12 cups of flour in it, I'm confident that I could use that pretty quickly before it went bad. And then once it was all used up, I could just get back into my bucket, grab another gallon bag of flour, and use that. Before I get started, I'm gonna go through and label each of my bags with the contents and also the date. That way I know what I have stored in each bag. I do measure things like flour and rice as I'm adding them to my Mylar bags. I just think it's easier. That way I know they're all about the same size. There's about the same amount in each bag. So this measuring cup holds 4 cups. I'll fill it 3 times, and that will give me 12 cups of flour in this gallon bag. Okay, so as you can see here, my gallon bag is full of flour, but not too full. I still have some room. I have plenty of room to put my oxygen absorbers in here and seal my bag. Once I get this bag of flour sealed up, heat sealed at the top, which I'll show you how to do that, and then stored away in a bucket, it will be good for 8 to 10 years. With the leftover flour that I had, I was able to bag up 7-gallon bags. So you can see if I do this every month, this will actually add up really, really quickly. Now I'm gonna add an oxygen absorber to each bag. Remember, once I open this packet, then I need to use all of these right away or they'll go bad. So these little packets come with a sticker, and as long as it's pink, then you know they're good. But once it turns blue, then these oxygen absorbers are no longer good. So what you're going to do, if you ever need to just use a few, you're not going to use the whole pack, right when you open this, take out the ones you're going to use and then store the rest in a mason jar with the lid on. You want it to be airtight so that these will stay good for future use. After I add oxygen absorbers to all of these bags and zip them sealed, I'm gonna have to heat seal them at the top. You can use an iron, a hair straightener, or even a food sealer to do this, but they have to be heat sealed to be stored long term. And if there's flour or any residue on the inside of these bags, then they're not going to heat seal properly. So before I add the oxygen absorbers, what I'm going to do is prepare these by wiping off the insides of the bags. So I'll do this to every bag of flour here. I'm just going to wipe the inside clean. That way, what I can do is then partially zip these closed and leave just enough space there, see, to where I can quickly add my little oxygen absorber. I'll go down the line, add an absorber, and zip it closed. And then I know that they're at least zipped sealed until I can heat seal them. Now all of my bags are partially zipped. I'm gonna go through really quickly and add one 300 cc oxygen absorber to each of these bags. So add one and seal it. Going down my line really quickly. All of my oxygen absorbers are in. I'm just gonna check my zip seal on each of these, make sure they're sealed while I am waiting to heat seal each one. Now my bag is sealed. I've got my oxygen absorber in here. It's labeled. The last thing I need to do is heat seal here at the top. You want to heat seal, if you have Ziploc bags, heat seal above the zip. That way, when you go to break into this bag, you can cut the heat seal off and you still have the Ziploc there to reseal it. So, you know, if you don't use all this right away, then you can reseal it and you can reuse these bags too. So like I said, I'm gonna use my food saver. I don't wanna vacuum seal this bag because all I'm really doing is sealing this top part here. The contents are already zipped in, so I'm just gonna use the seal feature. Don't mind my very full kitchen right now. Like I said, it's summer. Lots of stuff coming in from the garden, so I've got cans of stuff everywhere that need to be put away. All right, so this just takes a couple minutes to seal. Not even, actually seconds to seal. And when it's finished, you will see that you have a seal line right here, and you're gonna wanna give it a minute, then check this and make sure that it doesn't pull apart easily. You want a good seal across the whole bag here. Now that my bag is sealed and ready, I'm going to put it inside of a food grade bucket. And as you see, I can fit a few of these in here, probably 3 or 4. So once I have all 3 or 4 in, then I'll seal my bucket and store it in a cool, dry place. And like I said, this flour will be good for 8 to 10 years. All right, well, I've got lots more flour to seal and get put in buckets, and then I have to do my sugar and my rice, but the process is the same for all of those foods, with the only exception being sugar and salt. You do not want to use oxygen absorbers. Those are the only two foods I think that you don't want to use oxygen absorbers with. You still store them in Mylar bags and then inside of buckets. So the rest of the process is the same. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope this video was the encouragement you needed to start doing food prepping on whatever scale you think is appropriate for your family. So as you can see, this process isn't that complicated, and you don't even have to do it all at once. You can do it just like I'm doing it if you want to. Just buying a little bit extra each month and tucking whatever you don't use away for a rainy day. Don't forget to check the description for the link to my free ebook with details on shelf life for different types of food stored long-term, supplies needed for long-term food storage, how many oxygen absorbers to use in different size Mylar bags and with different foods, and just all the details that you need. It'll be linked in that ebook. All right, I will see you guys next time. Be sure to click subscribe and hit the like button before you go. I make new videos on motherhood, homesteading, and life on our farm each week.